For centuries, the human imagination has been captivated by a single, powerful image. A final meal shared between a teacher and his closest followers. That image has been painted, retold, dramatized, and reimagined so often that it has quietly replaced reality itself. Most people, when they think of that moment, unknowingly borrow their vision from Leonardo da Vinci and his iconic work, The Last Supper, a masterpiece of art, but not of history. Because the real table of Jesus Christ did not belong to the world of Renaissance Italy. It belonged to a harsher, simpler, more grounded reality. It was a world where food was never ornamental, where survival shaped every bite, and where the act of eating together carried meanings far deeper than appetite alone. Something has been lost between the painted table and the historical one, and what has been lost is not merely detail, it is understanding. Before we uncover what truly lay before Jesus and his disciples, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more deeply researched explorations like this. Now, let us return, not to a painting, but to the dust, the fire, and the living world of the first century. To understand what Jesus ate, one must first understand the conditions that determined what could be eaten at all. Jesus lived in a society where food was governed not only by availability, but by law, tradition, identity, and faith. The boundaries of the table were drawn long before any meal began. The dietary framework followed by Jesus and his contemporaries was shaped by the commandments preserved in the Hebrew Scriptures. These instructions distinguished the people of Israel from the surrounding nations, forming a visible and daily expression of obedience. Certain animals were permitted, others forbidden. Fish could be eaten only if they possessed fins and scales. Meat and dairy were never to be mixed. Blood itself was strictly avoided, requiring careful preparation and handling of any animal consumed. This was not merely about health or preference, it was about covenant identity. The geography of the land reinforced these patterns. Galilee, where Jesus spent much of his life and ministry, was a region of surprising fertility. Fields of barley and wheat rippled under the wind, olive trees stretched across hillsides, and the waters of the Sea of Galilee provided an abundant supply of fish. In contrast, the southern regions of Judea were more rugged and dry, encouraging pastoral life rather than intensive agriculture. Everything that appeared on a table had a story rooted in the soil, the water, or the labor of human hands. There were no distant imports, no exotic luxuries shipped across oceans. Food was immediate, local, and deeply tied to survival. Within this environment, three elements formed the foundation of daily sustenance: grain, olive oil, and wine. Together, they provided the majority of calories for the average person. Everything else, vegetables, fish, and the rare inclusion of meat, existed as additions to this essential core. Among all foods, bread held a position so central that it transcended its role as mere nourishment. In the language of the time, the word for bread could also signify food in general. To speak of eating was to speak of bread. It was, quite literally, life. However, the bread of the first century bore little resemblance to the loaves familiar to modern audiences. It was not soft, airy, or neatly sliced. Instead, it was dense, coarse, and often dark in color, particularly when made from barley. Barley was the grain of necessity, favored by those who could not afford the finer wheat reserved for wealthier households and special occasions. This detail becomes profoundly significant in passages such as Gospel of John chapter 6, where Jesus feeds a vast crowd using barley loaves. This was not simply an act of miraculous provision. It was an act rooted in the everyday reality of the people he served. He multiplied not a luxury, but a staple, the very bread that sustained the poor. The process of making this bread was labor-intensive and immediate. Dough was flattened by hand and pressed against the interior walls of a clay oven, where it baked quickly under intense heat. The result was a round, flat loaf marked by charred spots and infused with a smoky aroma. It is essential to understand that bread was never cut with a knife. To cut bread was to treat it as an object. To break it was to honor it as life. The act of breaking bread, so frequently mentioned in Scripture, was a physical, communal action. It required closeness. It created connection. It transformed eating into a shared experience. When Jesus broke bread, he was participating in a deeply ingrained cultural practice. Yet, in time, he would infuse that practice with meaning that extended far beyond the table. Bread alone, though sustaining, was rarely eaten without accompaniment. The most important of these accompaniments was olive oil. Its presence in the ancient world cannot be overstated. Olive oil functioned as cooking medium, flavor enhancer, preservative, medicine, cosmetic, and source of light. At mealtime, a common practice involved placing a shared dish of oil, sometimes mixed with herbs or vinegar, at the center of those gathered. Bread would be dipped into this mixture, allowing each person to partake from the same source. This custom reveals the depth of a statement recorded in Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 23. "He who has dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me." The significance of this moment lies not merely in identification, but in intimacy. To share a dish was to share trust, fellowship, and belonging. Beyond oil, the daily diet included a variety of plant-based foods. Lentils and beans formed the backbone of protein intake for most households. These were often prepared as thick stews, capable of feeding families over extended periods. Onions, garlic, and leeks contributed bold, unmistakable flavors, reflecting a culinary culture that did not shy away from intensity. Even in hardship, these foods held emotional weight. In Book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 5, the Israelites recall with longing the foods of Egypt: fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic, demonstrating how deeply taste and memory were intertwined. While plant-based foods dominated the daily diet, fish provided a more accessible form of animal protein, particularly in regions near water. The Sea of Galilee, central to Jesus' ministry, supported a thriving fishing industry. Several of Jesus' disciples were fishermen by trade, making fish not only a source of nourishment, but a defining aspect of their identity. The types of fish available ranged from larger species, suitable for grilling, to smaller varieties preserved through salting and drying. These preservation methods were essential in a world without refrigeration. Salted fish could be stored, transported, and consumed long after it was caught, ensuring a stable supply of protein. The Gospels preserve a strikingly simple yet profound image in Gospel of John, chapter 21, where the risen Jesus prepares fish over a charcoal fire for his disciples. This scene reflects continuity rather than change. Even after resurrection, the meal remains grounded in the familiar rhythms of daily life. In contrast to bread and fish, meat was a rarity for most people. Livestock represented long-term value through milk, wool, and labor. To slaughter an animal was to make a significant economic decision, one typically reserved for special occasions. Festivals, weddings, and religious observances provided the primary context for consuming meat. Among these occasions, Passover held particular importance. This annual celebration commemorated the deliverance of Israel from Egypt and involved the preparation of a lamb in accordance with specific ritual guidelines. It was during such a Passover meal, as recorded in Gospel of Luke chapter 22, that Jesus shared his final supper with his disciples. The elements present at that table were not random. They were deeply symbolic, shaped by generations of tradition. Wine also played a central role, though it differed significantly from modern expectations. It was routinely diluted with water, creating a beverage that was safer to drink than untreated water and moderate in its effects. Undiluted wine was considered excessive and improper. Equally important as the food itself was the manner in which it was consumed. Formal meals in the time of Jesus were not eaten while sitting upright at a table. Instead, participants reclined on low cushions, supporting themselves on one arm while using the other to eat. This posture fostered closeness and conversation. It allowed for a physical proximity that modern dining arrangements rarely replicate. In Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 23, the description of a disciple reclining close to Jesus reflects this cultural norm rather than an extraordinary gesture. Understanding this detail brings clarity to many gospel scenes, revealing a setting defined by intimacy, trust, and shared presence. When all these elements are brought together, the bread, the oil, the herbs, the fish, the wine, the posture, and the shared dishes, a more accurate picture of the final meal begins to emerge. It was not a display of wealth or extravagance. It was a gathering shaped by tradition, sustained by simplicity, and filled with meaning that extended beyond the physical. Within this setting, Jesus took familiar elements and invested them with new significance. The bread, already central to life, became a representation of his body. The wine, already essential to daily sustenance, became a symbol of his blood. These transformations did not occur in isolation from culture, but within it, drawing upon the ordinary to reveal the extraordinary. Even the act of offering a dipped piece of bread to Judas, often overlooked in its cultural context, carried profound weight. It was a gesture of honor and closeness, extended at a moment when betrayal was already unfolding. What Jesus ate is more than a matter of historical curiosity. It provides insight into how he lived, how he taught, and how he connected with others. His meals were not defined by abundance, but by presence. They were not marked by luxury, but by meaning. They brought people together, dissolved barriers, and created moments in which the ordinary became a vehicle for the divine. Today, across the world, the practice of sharing bread and wine continues. Though the forms have changed, the essence remains rooted in that first-century table, a table shaped by simplicity, sustained by necessity, and transformed by purpose. To understand what Jesus ate is to understand something deeper, that even the most basic elements of life can carry extraordinary significance when shared with intention. And perhaps that is the enduring lesson of the table, not what was eaten, but what it revealed.